And I was so depressed and scared. I remember I hid under my bed, and I realized under the bed that what I had done wrong.
Imagine an actor whose talent wasn't confined to the screen but resonated in every moment off camera. An artist so humble, so genuine, that even decades after stepping away from the spotlight, his influence continues to shape the industry. Gene Hackman was one of those rare individuals, and recently, legendary filmmaker Francis Ford Coppola, who worked alongside him, broke his silence to share untold stories of Hackman's quiet brilliance. Hackman's journey wasn't defined by the pursuit of fame, but by the legacy he left behind, in the hearts of those who worked with him, in the unforgettable roles he played, and in the humanity he infused into every performance. His story is a powerful reminder that some of the greatest artists in history never sought attention. They simply let their craft speak for itself. To truly understand Hackman's impact, we must step back into the heart of Hollywood, where his influence extended far beyond his iconic performances. For him, acting wasn't about pretending to be someone else. It was about becoming someone else. It was this philosophy that made his work magnetic, deeply authentic, and unforgettable. His legacy isn't just in the films he made, but in the way his artistry touched and inspired those who watched him, worked with him, and learned from him. Coppola recalls one defining moment that revealed Hackman's profound humility. During a critical scene, a young and inexperienced actor struggled to remember his lines. Apologizing repeatedly, he was visibly distressed. Then, Hackman did something extraordinary. Without saying much, he placed a calming hand on the actor's shoulder and said, "You have all the time you need." That simple gesture of patience and reassurance not only comforted the young actor, but deeply moved Coppola. This was not an isolated moment. It was who Hackman was. At the peak of his career, he carried himself with a quiet generosity that was rarely mentioned in the press. He understood the pressures of the acting world and built relationships based on respect, kindness, and empathy. In an industry often driven by ego, Hackman's ability to uplift others made him stand out in the most meaningful way. Beyond his kindness, Hackman's meticulous approach to his craft set him apart. Always the first to arrive on set, he was a man of quiet preparation. Even during breaks, he would study his script, jotting down notes in a small notebook, a habit that intrigued Coppola. When asked about it, Hackman revealed something profound. He observed the world around him, people, emotions, gestures, and subtly infused these details into his performance. For Hackman, acting wasn't just about delivering lines, it was about absorbing life itself. His process wasn't about preparing for a role. It was about preparing to understand the world, to connect with emotions that all humans share. This ability to capture the smallest, most authentic details made him one of the most compelling actors of his time. What truly set Hackman apart was his lived-in authenticity. When he stepped into a role, it wasn't just a performance, it was a transformation. He didn't merely act, he became. The boundary between actor and character disappeared, leaving audiences captivated by his raw, unfiltered emotion. He never relied on theatrical flourishes or grand gestures. Instead, he pursued truth, the kind that resonates deeply and lingers long after the credits roll. But perhaps the most profound revelation from Coppola's reflections is the lasting impact Hackman had on him, not just as a filmmaker, but as a person. Coppola admitted that Hackman shaped his understanding of human nature, compassion, and authenticity. He even confessed that Hackman taught him more about life than anyone else he had met in Hollywood. For Coppola, working with Hackman wasn't just an education in filmmaking, it was an education in humanity. And like so many others who crossed paths with him, Coppola carries the lessons Hackman left behind. His legacy isn't just etched in the films he made, but in the people he inspired, the kindness he shared, and the quiet brilliance that defined his life. Gene Hackman's influence on the film industry was as profound as it was understated. Francis Ford Coppola recently shed light on how Hackman's artistic impact often flew under the radar. Despite his undeniable presence, his acting style was never flashy, never forced, but it was always powerful. Unlike actors who consciously sought to shape cinema, Hackman did so effortlessly. His performances became a cornerstone of 1970s Hollywood, a time when legends like Marlon Brando, Al Pacino, and Jack Nicholson were redefining the craft. And yet, Coppola insists, Hackman was just as essential to that shift. Even if he wasn't as loudly celebrated, he was the actor's actor, a quiet mentor whose legacy seeped into the very DNA of film. Hackman didn't need to be the loudest voice in the room. His work spoke louder than words. One of the most revealing stories Coppola shared was about Al Pacino, who, fresh off The Godfather, privately approached him after watching The Conversation. Pacino was in awe of Hackman's performance and wanted to know his secret. How did he bring such depth and authenticity to the screen? Coppola simply smiled and told him, "Hackman doesn't pretend. He just lives in the moment." That honesty left a mark on Pacino, who carried it into his own performances, especially in Dog Day Afternoon. What Pacino admired most was Hackman's ability to deliver raw emotion without manipulating the audience's perception. His characters never felt artificial. They felt real. But Hackman's influence didn't stop with actors. Filmmakers like Dustin Hoffman and Steven Spielberg were equally inspired by him. Hoffman admitted that Hackman's portrayal of Harry Caul in The Conversation fundamentally changed his approach to character development. Spielberg, who frequently visited the set of The Conversation, later revealed that Hackman's work shaped his own storytelling, particularly in creating deeply human, relatable characters. Spielberg has often cited Hackman as one of his greatest inspirations, someone who taught him the value of flawed, complex protagonists. That influence can be seen in films like E.T. and Schindler's List, where characters feel deeply personal, vulnerable, and real. Hackman wasn't just acting, he was redefining Hollywood's idea of character depth. Before him, leading roles were often simple, pure heroes or villains with little complexity. Hackman challenged that. Through films like The French Connection and The Conversation, he introduced audiences to protagonists who were deeply flawed, yet profoundly human. His characters made mistakes, wrestled with moral dilemmas, and carried emotional weight. This shift paved the way for the nuanced anti-heroes we now see in modern cinema and television. Hackman didn't just play these characters, he legitimized them, proving that complexity and imperfection made for the most compelling storytelling. Coppola also revealed how Hackman's reluctance to chase fame may have led to him being overshadowed by more attention-grabbing actors. Hackman had no interest in celebrity. He was driven by the power of storytelling. He often turned down high-profile roles if they didn't feel authentic to him, a rarity in Hollywood. One striking example? Hackman was initially offered the role of Hannibal Lecter, long before it eventually went to Anthony Hopkins. But he passed on it, simply because the character didn't resonate with him. This wasn't a calculated career move. It was just Hackman's quiet integrity. He wasn't chasing roles for the sake of stardom. He was searching for stories that mattered in an industry obsessed with the spotlight. That kind of artistic honesty was rare. Beyond his performances, Hackman had an unparalleled understanding of storytelling, a quality that left an indelible mark on Coppola. The director recalled watching Hackman approach every scene with truth, simplicity, and humanity. His ability to strip away artificiality and focus on raw emotion deeply influenced Coppola's own directorial style. In fact, Coppola admitted that he often asked himself, how would Hackman handle this? It became a guiding principle, shaping his work and his approach to directing actors. Hackman's legacy wasn't just in his performances. It became a benchmark for excellence in filmmaking. One moment that exemplifies Hackman's dedication to authenticity happened during the filming of The Conversation. In one pivotal scene, Hackman disagreed with Coppola's lighting choices, feeling that the artificial setup would undercut the emotional weight of the moment. Rather than making demands, he approached Coppola with quiet conviction and explained his perspective. Intrigued, Coppola trusted Hackman's instincts and adjusted the lighting. The result? A more powerful, emotionally resonant scene. That was Hackman's brilliance. He wasn't just portraying a character, He was ensuring that every element of the story rang true. And Hackman's influence continues to shape Hollywood, extending beyond his own era. Coppola revealed how a young Spielberg, still finding his footing as a filmmaker, would observe Hackman on set, quietly taking notes. Years later, while preparing for Schindler's List, Spielberg recalled the lessons Hackman had unknowingly taught him, lessons about restraint, subtlety, and, above all, truth. Hackman's impact wasn't confined to the actors he worked with. It rippled outward, shaping the very foundation of modern cinema. Gene Hackman's career was more than a series of great performances. It was a quiet revolution. He redefined storytelling, acting, and character depth, inspiring generations of filmmakers and actors. As Coppola's reflections remind us, Hackman's legacy isn't just in his roles, but in the integrity and artistry he brought to every moment. In the end, Hackman wasn't just a star, he was a beacon of artistic truth. Though he stepped away from Hollywood, his influence endures, shaping cinema for generations to come.